Hello, welcome to Motel. Hello. See, this is why what I'm about to say is becoming a problem. Hello, welcome to Living and Active. This is going to be a video on the Motel's New Machine playlist. And this is probably going to be the last Motel's New Machine video I do, at least for a while. And I'll explain why that is before I get into the content of this actual video. So what I have been noticing a trend in myself, and I don't like the fact that I've been swayed from the original intent of this channel. This channel was started based on the verse, the word of God is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword. Its intent was to show people how they can take God at his every word given in his testimony of himself in Scripture, in all things, in every occasion, and use that knowledge in that learned pattern of God's faithfulness and truthfulness to manage their lives better, more healthfully, not necessarily happier, not necessarily more but grounded internally on the truth of God's word. That's what this channel was meant to be started as, and I have caught myself in a recent video switching from that meaning of living and active to the feel-good meaning of living and active in terms of I'm a disabled person and I'm insisting on staying living and active in order for my own self wellness type thing, and I don't like that shift at all. I don't. What that has led to is the recognition that I have been doing more Motel's New Machine videos recently because they're easier. It's just, here's the random antique machine or vintage machine that I'm working on right now. Here's some feel good type of message that goes along with it. Poof, there's my video. That's only going to carry so far. You know, after a while, the machines all start looking the same. After a while, I start running out of things to say, ways to apply, very similar processes to how I go about conserving the machines and redistributing them back out into the economy before I start repeating myself, and then I'm just seeking for content creation, and it takes even further from the point of this channel. So, like I said, this is probably going to be the last Motel's New Machine video for a while. I've shown plenty. I've given demonstration videos of before and after machines that come in and all kinds of whatever. They go out working and then they are reintroduced into the local economy. They do good in many different aspects for a few people. So I don't think there's any. It's more of a don't show, don't tell, but do type thing for Motel's New Machine from here on out. But I do want to do this one final video because there's an important thing to acknowledge about this work. Now, I have done a video previously on this machine. This is the 1929 Singer 99 that has the painted on fingerprints and the spilled paint and everything that came inside of this cabinet from the consignment shop that I found it in. It was sitting there forever. It was marked for a higher price, wouldn't sell. Nobody was buying it, and so it was marked for a much lower price. And finally, I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and purchase this thing and do what needs to be done so it can actually stop sitting here and do some good. So the machine is just about ready to go. I've got a couple little things I want to do to it now that I have it mounted back into the table. I was considering actually trying to figure out a way to refinish the cabinet itself, and then I realized that there's just no way. I'm a dude in a wheelchair. I have a one-bedroom apartment. I don't have the supplies, the materials, or the means really to either do the work or clean up from doing the work. But what I did figure out that I could do is I can make this functional. First, I have to fix the damaged hinges that were blown out at the shop that kept the top from being, hang on, to keep the top from being securely affixed to the machine. But what I can do is I can add potential value in redoing some of the work. So what I'm going to do to this one, sometimes I had this discussion with a friend of mine, probably, I don't know, 6-7 months ago. He asked me what my reasoning was behind the sewing machine project, and I said, well, he asked me, what rationale I used to convince myself that the sewing machine project was actually going to bring any kind of economic value into our local community. And I said, well, it's easy. I bring in real durable goods for whatever I can afford to bring them in bulk, pretty much. And then I get them back into a working state, not a collector item state, but into a working state. And then I take the loss at my point. I increase the value of the thing, but I drop the cost to zero and then donate it to the thrift store, which sets their price on it. And then whoever buys it increases the value by whatever they paid for it. And then they increase the value of what they produce with that machine as the proceeds from the sale of the machine actually get diverted into the food pantry that the thrift store operates. And then that value placed into the additional food supplies that are able to go to the people who need help with food goes into taking some of the burden off of that family, goes into creating a little bit of stability and security for that family, where otherwise they wouldn't have had it. And so in both directions, on the invisible economy of generating resources that can be distributed throughout wherever they're needed, in terms of people that are of little means or few means, whatever. And in the economy of the durable good, the machines themselves, every single person now along either chain of economy is increasing the value of what has been put into the system. So continuing with machine, if someone uses the machine for a little bit, they have I give them enough documentation to show the work that's been done with it. I give an example of the work, and uh, if they build a business or whatever, or they use their work, the things that they make in the machine to benefit other people, that's one way in which the value of the item itself increases. Uh, or if they take the machine that they buy for however much money at the thrift store, they recognize this true value, and then they turn around and sell it on Etsy for probably 10 times as much as what they bought it for, then that increase in monetary value now translates into that person's ability to use their resale skills and motivations or whatever to increase uh, their own household's solvency in terms of their own resources, income, whatever, their ability to take care of themselves. And then it goes on to the next person, and the next person says, well, okay, so I bought this for $300 something, so I'm going to turn around and resell it. And all of that is possible because at some point, someone was willing to knock the cost point all the way down to zero while increasing the value of the durable good itself. So that is my thinking. That's the whole mentality behind all of this. And that's the only reason it works. Somebody, one person in the chain, has to be willing to take the hit, increase the value of the thing that's being returned into the economy, and dropping the price point either to nothing or low enough so that every single step in the follow-on transactions in all directions has to be an increase. That is how you add value into an economic system. Not by creating more currency or anything else like that. We know that's called inflation. There's more dollars to go around, but they buy less. You add value into the goods, the durable goods, the real things you can put your hands on. And then you set them up so that every single follow-on transaction and interaction that anybody has with that piece of equipment or the materials or whatever turns into an increase in worth. Not just monetary value, but actual worth. So that's the idea behind Motel's new machine in general, and specifically what I'm going to do with this table, since I can't refinish it. Now, as you can see, that the finish is not great. The hardware has been cleaned up. I just cleaned that up in my demonstration video of my hand vise. These are the hinges I was working on. Okay, but I have a plan. Instead of just putting everything back together and everything, and then saying, well, I did the machine, so that's all that's required. I want this unit to succeed, and I want it to succeed in the best way possible for all involved, for every single person that's going to be next in the chain of economy going down the line in both directions. I want the thrift store to be able to sell this for as much as they can. I want the people who buy the machine and the cabinet together to get as much functionality and satisfaction out of it as they possibly can. And so I need to build into what I do with this cabinet, not only static value, like would be if I was trying to, if I was going to refinish the whole thing and make everything all nice and perfect, but potential value, so that somebody can actually get a cabinet that is cosmetically in rough condition, and then if they have the resources, the ability, the time, or whatever, then they themselves can refinish it if they want, and either keep it and get more enjoyment out of it, or sell it again for a much higher price, bringing more resources and income into their own household, and then it goes along that way. But if I leave the cabinet as it is, then people are going to see the cabinet as just some junked out thing that happens to have a fairly decent sewing machine in it. But oh yeah, by the way, there's paint fingerprints on the somewhat decent sewing machine. So I have to detract from the visual, from the superficial reasons that people are going to throw up in their minds, the objections they're going to have for paying a reasonable thrift store price for something that can actually do some people some good. And I'm going to have to do that by expanding the potential usefulness of this cabinet. So how I'm going to do that is, you can see here, this little thing that I actually bought from the thrift store. I'm going to donate this machine back to. That is real wooden slats made into a little thing, a little board, whatever. It's just some kind of cool little wall art chintzy thing, the way it is. I will come back to that in a second. Here's the original topper for the sewing machine cabinet. And yes, I've not had much recovery time, and yes, I am having problems, as you can tell from my speech. But here's the failure point of the hinges that led to the hinge being, or the lid being almost torn completely off in the consignment shop that I bought it from, and the reason why people weren't going to buy this machine. You can see, if I get the camera placed correctly, you can see that there's delamination of the veneer. The paint's coming off, and you can see that there's been some humidity interaction with the edge of the board. It's split in a couple places or whatever. The wood itself is still solid. I mean, it's it's about 5/8 thick, if not 3/4 inch. So there's still plenty of wood. It just looks like it's ready to, excuse the lens cap, it's kind of swaying into frame here. But it looks bad, and I admit that it looks bad. Like I said, I'm not equipped. I don't have the stuff to make it not look bad. But what I can do is I can take a little bit of, like first right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some wood glue. I'm going to fill in this crack in between the screw holes here. I'm going to let that set. I'm going to let it dry for about a day. And then I'm going to take some of that marine varnish that I have, and I'm going to coat the inside of this mortise for the hinge, for the other half of the hinges. I'm going to coat that in the varnish, let it seep in, let it soak in into the holes and everything, and let that sit for about a day and a half, 2 days. That will actually fill in the cracks and the voids in some of the wood that was messed up when the hinge got torn up, and it will help seal out moisture from getting into that area again. I'm not going to do anything with these parts. This can all be done by anybody, truthfully. Anybody that knows what they're doing with refinishing wood is going to know how to handle this. So I'm not too worried about that. My main priority is getting this hinge point secured again and stabilized to the point where it will actually take a hinge again, so that the function of folding out correctly and staying put when you let go of it when it's folded out can actually be returned. Now, because I know that that is going to be a weak point, and I know that if I just leave it the way it is right now, and I reattach the hinges after I get that point sealed and everything else, it doesn't matter how much I bolster it. All it's going to take is for one person to extend the shelf, the top leaf, and it sets something heavy on it, and all of that is just going to rip right out because there's nothing supporting the weight of the shelf underneath it when this thing is extended. So, to answer that, I have gotten these two shelf brackets. Sorry, the camera work isn't as fantastic as I would like it to be, but hey, why start doing things different or special if this is going to be the last Mottles in the Machine video? So the thought is, just trying to get positioned here. The thought is, I take this white thing that I showed you earlier, and I mount it to the side of the table just under the line of the top. Now, I'm going to have to do some things to this piece as well in order to make it line up correctly with the way the top will open. But with these heavy gauge brackets underneath it, that's my tattoo, that's not a bracket. With these heavy gauge brackets underneath it, then I'll be able to actually get it mounted so that it can serve as a shelf when the table is closed and the sewing machine is stored. And when it is open, the shelf can be cleared off or whatever. And these shelf brackets here get mounted in, screwed and drilled into the legs, which are solid wood. So someone would actually be able to lift this side of the table with the leg itself, or from the shelf. But I'll keep that gap so that the white part sits on top of the bracket underneath the bottom of the top here, so that when it opens, the top of the machine will rest on the shelf and will be caught by the structure of the shelf itself and supported, so there would be no way to blow out that hinge again, no matter what happens with the integrity of where the hinge is going to be mounted again once I fix or do what I can to strengthen or stabilize that wood. An added benefit of this particular part of the build are these hooks. I don't have enough hands, or enough half a hands, to show this very well, but the way it lines out is when everything is installed, right? You have your shelf here. Those hooks will actually be subdued. They won't stick out past the edge of the shelf. They'll be accessible because they're big hooks and there's a deep curve in there, so they'll be easy to reach. But the hooks themselves will actually be concealed underneath the lead edge of the shelf. Okay, so that's going to be a handy thing that's going to add potential value, or at least usability, performance to the machine, to the cabinet, excuse me, to make people want to say, okay, this is actually worth getting, and and even if it is ugly, and I put in the work to refinish it, once that work is done, the base unit itself is of an increased value, above and beyond what I could expect if this shelf hadn't been added. So that's one aspect of increasing the value. Another thing I'm going to do to this cabinet to increase the potential value for those looking for such things. Again, this is for the maximized benefit of everybody involved in both directions along the chain of the economy for as long as potentially possible. This door, as I showed you in the other video, it has a secret, but it also has a failing point. It hangs loose just from age or whatever. It hangs loose, it droops, and it doesn't stay shut. So I'm going to answer that with one of these nifty rigs. I'm probably going to mount it right about here, because that will give it the most structural strength, I think. And instead of trying to maintain or control the sag from up top, which never works well, it's kind of down at the bottom, and then it's right there for quick access from the bolt to the handle, so someone can just slide it open, unlock it, unlatch it, whatever, and then the handle's right there so they can just pull it out, and all that stuff is very ergonomic and expedient, efficient, effective, whatever. But obviously I'm going to set that up so that the door is actually more level before I get that secured down. Now, in the other video that I did, I already showed you guys these things, but you will notice that they look different. If you remember, in the other video, where I showed these things, and you can still tell a little bit where, I didn't get all the paint off, like right here. But these were all painted over. It really did look like a piece of chewed up plastic that someone had just kind of stuck to the inside of this door and didn't really think much about, whatever. So I took some time, I stripped a bunch of the paint off, I left a little bit of it there, just enough to tell the story that it had been painted. But I got the metal underneath nice and clean. Had a little bit of corrosion, but it was mainly just gunk and oil and whatever, so I got it cleaned off. I used some 91% isopropyl alcohol to do the paint stripping, and it seemed to work fairly well. I used a dental tool scraper for the flat parts because that was more efficient. And then I just remounted that, and with the better appearance of this rack right here, and the addition of, these are brand new screws, by the way. Let me show them. Those screws are brand new. I just bought them today. They are antique brass finish screws, regular wood screws, but they have an antique brass finish on them, specifically to match what this is intended to be. And I'm replacing all of the screws, the original screws, which you can see in the bottom of this tray. I'm replacing all of those screws with these screws that you can't see because they're in the bag. But with these screws, just because they're a little bit larger in diameter, they're better finished, they're clean, and they add to the attractiveness of all of these mounted things. Like the difference between the new screws that are holding that shelf in place, that tray, and the screws that were in there is night and day. I mean, it just looked funky. This side is a little bit loose, so what I'm probably going to do is, I don't think re-gluing it would help. What I might do is I might actually figure out how long of a screw I need, and I'll do a pocket screw through the side into this corner piece, through the back and into the actual structure of the door, and then that will just keep it in place, and I don't have to worry about, you know, someone bumping it and then ripping the tray out. So I think that would be the best thing to do. Very cost effective to do it that way, and it protects it from damage during transport or whatever. That's going to remove the momentum of the ever increasing value point. And then that's it. That seems like fairly extensive, but it's not really. I mean, it's nowhere near as extensive as if I was trying to refinish the whole surface or whatever. Just very simple things. Didn't cost much money, truthfully. I think the most expensive thing in that whole setup was those mounting the shelf brackets, because that makes sense. But the machine itself was already in pretty decent shape. Don't have to do much to that. And that's not going to take much longer. And then another thing here is that with it being hand cranked, this doesn't have to be necessarily something else. It has to be located close to an electrical outlet. This can sit out in the middle of a floor or whatever. There's no cords going everywhere. I'm probably actually going to rip the residual electrical out of the inside of the cabinet as well. But just to kind of reduce the weight and everything else, and reduce the things inside the cabinet that are there to monkey with if someone does decide to refinish it, whatever. But this hand crank here, it looks complicated, and the integration with the spoke looks like it's pretty intense. But seriously, really all that's holding it in place is this one bolt right here. You take out this one bolt, you pull this thing off, you disengage this drive arm here from the spoke wheel, and the whole thing comes off in one piece, and it can store right in that tray. You just put the bolt back in the hole so you don't lose it, and then the sewing machine sits completely back down into the table. And then when it's in the table and it's closed, then you have a decent little cabinet type thing that happens to hold the sewing machine, and it's got the table surface itself. It'll have the shelf out here, and unlike most machines, you will actually be able to grab onto the shelf and use it to move the machine from place to place without really worrying about ripping the shelving off, because I'm going to use at least inch long screws to go into the solid wood of the legs, just to make sure that people can do that. So that's the thing. So I hope this video has been informative. I hope whatever you're into, whether sewing machines or whatever, if you have the mind to do something that is truly beneficial to other people around you, if you're trying to figure out some kind of way of doing something with whatever limited resources you have that might actually do something community-wide in terms of building up local economy, and this is goods economy, not capital economy, through some kind of system that is ever increasing the worth of things. Hopefully something I've said here, or something that I've demonstrated, will give you an idea for some way you can be part of the solution and not the problem. As we Gen Xers, we are all very well aware of the problems, But many of us are short on solutions, and it's not because we're lazy, it's because you just don't know what's still available, what there is left to try, because it seems like all of the resources and all of the resourcefulness and problem solving skills that we had when we were younger, that steps have been taken as we've aged to keep us from reverting to those things. So if you think that all of the answers, all of the non-infrastructure answers and potential troubleshooting or problem solving or whatever have been taken away from you, I'm here to tell you that that might not necessarily be the case. So if you have a mind to do these kinds of things to help your local community, to help the people in your local community, maybe this is a place to start. So this is kind of cool. I actually could sit in between my two living room mechanical clocks while they tell you it's 9 p.m. They're talking to each other, which is very nice. I like it when they get sort of synchronized like that. If I wait long enough, if I sit here long enough and make you stare at the sewing machine, you might hear the one in my bedroom too. Unless it already sounded and I didn't catch it. Or it stopped because I forgot to wind it. But anyway, yeah, that's video. This is probably going to be the last Motel's new machine video that I do in a while, if not for good, because like I said, I do want to return to the focus of this channel, which is getting people genuine help from the only source of help that is eternal, that is infallible, that is unassailable, and that is the true testimony of God's word concerning himself and ourselves and everything that he did to reconcile the difference between the two. So with that, Hebrews 11:6, without faith it is impossible to please God. Those who come to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. So until next time, if there is a next time, and there probably won't be for this playlist, God be with you.